What is up, everybody, and welcome back to On and Off the Mat. Today we're off the mat, and we have a very special guest, 10th Planet Black Belt, and Professor Gary Meek.
Yeah, so there's like a memory study they were doing on like how many chunks of numbers, like strings of numbers people could learn, and they found that chunking them was a big part. So learning them in like threes and fours and pairs, and then they learned that doing them in a way that associates with something you already do, like dates, or the guy that was doing it, he was a runner, so it was run times for him, and he got to like, I want to say 30 or 40, maybe 50 strings of a number at a time.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's crazy.
I do mine weird. I either will do it like dates, where it's like a 2, and then a 4, or I'll do like a phone number, a 3 and a 4,
Yep.
or I'll be like, I can't remember anything. I'm just like, all right, 1.
One.
So it happens you get old.
I like seeing the cashier people, they pause. And they're like, what's your phone number? I'm like, 210-8597. They're like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, wife gets pissed at me because I changed my rhythm. She's like, why don't you keep the same rhythm? I'm like, I don't know. It'll be like a 2 number, a 3 number, back to a 2 number, a 1, and then a 4 number.
You just got the varieties to spice it up, right?
Well, I mean, you got these huge chunk of number, and I read it, all of a sudden I'll be like, okay, did she get it? I should stop here. And then be like, okay, yeah, she's on point. And then I'll go like a 4 number, and then it pisses her off. She's like, what are you doing?
I've done that with people where, but it's like same idea of that change up, but it's like, oh, you didn't hear me. Let me change the style of my voice.
Yes.
Maybe you'll hear. They'll
Start
tune in
to
differently.
raising up. And
Yeah.
Guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all that shit. You know what to do. If you like any of it, make sure you go and check out our link tree. It's on our Instagram. Our Instagram is NeckStepBJJ. You can check us out, and we have everything on our link tree from all of our affiliates. If you will hunt, you can use code on and off the mats to save 15% at checkout. We also have our Brandon McCatherine affiliate on there, and you can get literally a giant library of everything from Steam-a-locks to steamy locks to your punch choking folks to Brandon's falling triangles because your boy don't fly. You can get all of that through our link tree. Make sure you sign up. It's awesome.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Gary Meek.
Oh, yeah. What's
This
up?
is he.
That is him.
That's him.
Tell us about yourself, Gary. Tell the fans, tell the people who you are.
Gary Meek. Been doing martial arts since I was 4 years old, mostly taekwondo. Started doing jiu-jitsu back in, mid 2000s, but was introduced to it through Derek Stewart in like 99, 2000, something like that, where we trained together for years. And it was more Japanese jiu-jitsu based and kickboxing and everything else under the sun, Kali, JKD. And then I was in the military at that time, and I PCS down to Alabama, where there was nothing other than karate and taekwondo. So I started training and teaching taekwondo down there, and I was like, well, I got to do this grappling thing now that I know anything about it. So I started incorporating grappling into taekwondo, and it was basically just Japanese jiu-jitsu style of grappling. And at the time, a 3-stripe white belt, John Kim, approached me and said, hey, you know, can I roll with you guys? And then it got to the point where it's like, all right, 3-stripe white belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu knows much more than I do. So I was like, yeah, why don't you teach us? And we'll actually learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So that was Montgomery, Alabama. The very first Brazilian jiu-jitsu school was taught by a 3-stripe white belt. And now I think there's like a slew of black belts there, and several schools. But yeah, so I started learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Brought it back to Derek. I was like, check this Brazilian jiu-jitsu out. And so he started looking at it and got into 10th Planet. That's how I got into the Planet Jiu-Jitsu. And then here we are today, 15, 16, whatever years later, I have no clue. Back to that whole math thing and the numbers we were talking about earlier.
It's awful.
Yeah. But, yeah, so been going ham ever since. Got my black belt about 3 years ago now, and just been trying to keep up with everything and everybody, to include this guy.
Yeah, can you clarify what that means?
You guys pick stuff up so much faster than I can. I've got so much on my brain. It's like one of those things where I got to pick and choose what stays. That and your ability to train hard more than I can. So at this point, I'm, once, and we've talked about this and with Rick as well, just once you guys start getting to that certain point, roughly about, purple brown, it's like we're all learning from each other anymore. So yeah, it's been good. It's all fun. It's all jiu-jitsu at the end of the day.
How did you feel when you got your black belt?
That was actually a total surprise, because I was not thinking I was
emotional. I'm crying. I'm a mess. No.
at least another year or so. Just based on how long, because Derek gave me my black belt with Eddie. So it was a nice little joint thing. But Derek, I consider so much farther ahead of me than I am. And it took him, like 4.5, 5 years or whatever to get his.
That's quick.
And then
It's really quick.
Well, I mean, from brown belt. That's how
okay.
long
I
he was.
was
Yeah,
like,
no.
No,
That's
that's
how
too
long he was
fast.
a brown belt for. And I was like, man, I was like, okay, so I know I got time. If it took him that long, and he's so much better than I am. And but no, so it was a shock. I was, I knew Eddie was there, and I knew Derek was there. And even when Derek got up and he was talking about doing a promotion, I didn't think it was going to be me at the time. And I remember sitting next to Jeremy. And Jeremy's filming, and he turns over to me. I'm like, and I remember looking over at him like, nah, and then it was pretty dope. It was cool. It was a shock. It was one of those moments where, at that time I had already had about 12, 13 years into jiu-jitsu, but it was, like I said, when you start at, learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu with a white belt, and that was your main instructor, and you would travel, once or twice a week up to, about an hour away to go train with a brown belt, a purple belt, and a couple blues. It's just a slower progress. And then, and then it wasn't until I got here to O'Fallon I started training under a brown belt full time. But then again, I took a break for, 3 years with work, averaging once or twice a week. So it was one of those things where I felt competent, but still shocking.
Yeah.
So it was weird.
I just realized we have a similar story in jiu-jitsu, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu origins. Like, I was first learning from white belt too.
Yeah.
He was a white belt at the time when he first started teaching us. So that's interesting.
It's weird, and especially, when did you start? Year wise.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. So my thought is, like, I went to Worlds as a white belt. I'm pretty sure that was 2011. So I started either 2010 or no, I graduated 2009. So I probably started in 2010.
Yeah. So yeah, jiu-jitsu was prominent around here. Yeah. So yeah, it is weird that you started with a white belt back then. So yeah, it's one of those weird things where everything kind of lines up right, and now look at you.
Learning a lot. Learning from a lot of really good guys. I find that one of the more interesting things to pick up from people who are really good at teaching is their language, like how they orchestrate the language to kind of like depict what's actually happening, so that people can like absorb it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we've talked about this, when it came down to watching different BJJ fanatic, instructors. This instructor does it this way. This one organizes it this way. This one's just chaotic.
Yeah.
And I've been, so teaching-wise, through Taekwondo, I've been teaching since I was in my early teens, like a preteen almost. Because in Taekwondo, it's very structured. So it's super easy to teach. You could have a 6-year-old go teach another, whatever. because they're all learning the same thing. So even still, that at a very young age, that puts you in front of people and forces you to, work on public speaking and everything else. And the nice thing about learning from more traditional art is everything is structured and it's organized. So all you have to do is you take that organization and you just regurgitate it. As that translates to jiu-jitsu, which is very chaotic, there is no formalized structure. You've got to basically figure out your own way of teaching. And what I have found is that it's, I teach a big chunk of it and let people just get familiar with it. And then I go back and I'm like, all right, let's pick on this detail here. And I'm like, all right, then I'll go back and I'll clear up some more details over the whole path. But even if that's one technique over one day, if you span off an entire month, it takes a lot of structuring, and you got to figure out what's the best way, the best methodology for you, because everybody has different learning styles. And this is another thing we've talked about is, I have hard time. I have to get lots of reps in order for me to retain anything. You can show me something once and I'll be like, okay, that's super dope, and I'll get it right there. And you'll see that in class. You'll see the people that, you'll teach them something. They're like, oh, I really want to learn this. They'll do it once, but they won't remember it, the next week. Because they're like, yeah, I got it, or whatever. It's like, all right, I'm ready to move on. It's up. It's one of those things where people get bored easy.
Yeah. They don't... Like, they can do the same technique over and over again, but they're not understanding those nuances. I think that, personally, once I'm like, okay, I don't know what else to do with it, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to positional spar it. Because then that kind of prompts those questions where, if I'm just like, oh yeah, I can get into Ashi. Okay, now get into Ashi while someone doesn't want you to. And that's the only thing you're trying to do. Like, you have to get creative and have better fundamentals and figure out how to how to do that. It's actually a lot harder than you would think it would be. And then you realize, oh, I just know what it looks like. I don't understand it yet.
And add on the fact that as an instructor, you have to look at, there are different body types, different lengths of body, which is one of the reasons why I really enjoy having a variety of instructors. We're all different sizes. I'm 6'2", 200 pounds. You're half my size. And Kiai's a quarter of my size.
Dude, I'm bigger than he is.
Yeah.
But you've got, we have that ability to say, okay, like I said, I have a hard time, playing legs with you because your legs are so much shorter than mine. My legs come all the way around here. My feet are this big, so all you got to do is look at them and you've got them in a straight ankle.
Hell yeah.
So it's one of those things where, another aspect of teaching is you have to really understand, not only learning styles, but also how to apply, techniques to all different body types. So it's...
Was that ever something that came up in Taekwondo? The people ever
No, because Taekwondo is,
at least in like the sparring area?
You could teach a punch like this, and as long as they're throwing their fist out there, you're like, okay, yeah, you got the general concept.
Because like in boxing, they're like, okay, you're shorter limbed, you're a shorter person, that person has more reach. You have to get in the inside space.
Yeah.
But I guess with kicking, you're
far away. There is that aspect, because if they got long arms, you're like, okay, I can use my legs. But if they got long arms, chances are they got long legs. You're like, well, shit, now I got to deal with that.
Okay.
So there is footwork, but that's, in traditional arts, I think it's one of the lacking things is the footwork. They don't focus on it as much as a, more of a combat aspect, like kickboxing and boxing, where they really focus on footwork to cut those angles and everything else. Taekwondo will teach you, all right, you got to side-to-side angles and all that other jazz, but that's less focused on how to accurately apply that footwork into those angles than just like, all right, we can kick over here, we can kick over here. But that's going on a whole nother tangent. But
okay, but so you got to 5th degree in Taekwondo?
Yeah, I got my 5th degree way back in the day.
If we had to compare getting that that degree, because it's the highest degree of black belt you had, and then getting a jiu-jitsu black belt, how do they compare?
Let's see, timeline, it was almost about the same. So, let's see. because you get your black belt in Taekwondo about an average of 2.5, 3 years, your first one. And that's how I kind of look at jiu-jitsu is your blue belt's equivalent to like a black belt, you know, in traditional arts. It's like you've got those basics down. Now it's really time to start, you know, going into it. But I would say there was a lot more blood, sweat, and tears for my jiu-jitsu black belt than going all the way up to 5th degree. Because once you get your 1st degree black belt, you learn a couple forms, you learn a couple kicks, you know, and you put in the time. And then once you put in that time, you can test. And as long as you can regurgitate that information, and you know, and being young as I was during that whole time, I can apply all the techniques fairly well. So it was one of those things where it was easy. You know, it was easy to get promoted and everything else. You just bide the time. But going through the ranks of, you know, white, blue, purple, brown, you have to fight. You have to do the technique really well. It's a completely different, you know, aspect. It's
application matters.
Two different things. Exactly. You still have to be able to understand and do the technique, but you have to be able to translate it as well and apply it in an actual scenario. You know, vice Taekwondo, it's very independent. You know, there's a couple scenes where you, a couple aspects of where you have to do it with a partner, but it's all prearranged. And as long as you can, you know, even halfways do any type of, you know, combative situation, you know, you're going to pass your test. So it's one of those things where there is no test for jiu-jitsu. It's, you know, here's your black belt. You put in the work to get it.
It's less tests and more like, hey, you're ready. Here it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the cool things. And we've had that discussion. We talk all the time, but we've had that discussion. Should jiu-jitsu have tests? And if okay, they should have tests. Okay. Well, what are the parameters of the test? How do you take subjectivity out of that test? You know, and be more objective about it. So, and it's one of those things where everybody has different opinions. You know, I think it's one of those things where, you know, subjectivity does apply drastically because there are different body types, different ages. Some people can't do some things that others can. You know, we were at a camp, Midwest training camp last year, where you've got people with, you know, missing limbs, and how does that apply? And oddly enough, I was doing a technique where that person needed that limb, so I had to modify it on the spot, and it worked out really well. You know, we changed it up, we changed the angle, we did this and that, and man, it worked out fantastic. So it's one of those things that, you know, totally off subject. Holy cow, I'm lost. Where did we go? We were talking about black belt, what it takes to get to black belt, and then everything else.
I mean, you've talked a lot about, you know, what fits into becoming a black belt. I know we've talked about this before. I asked you, I remember we were on the car ride to the Midwest training camp, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But I was like, what is it? What does it take to get a black belt? What does that mean? And you've said some of the things, but I guess to make it a lot simpler, maybe a little bit easier for you to speak about, because I remember the answer was, I don't know.
The answer is I don't know about just about everything.
What, I mean, obviously you were surprised, but what do you think might have been, like, you know, Derek?
One of the factors about then as opposed to later?
Where Derek was like, Gary's ready for a black belt.
Yeah. I don't know what goes on in Derek's mind. Derek is one of those people, he's like a sponge, and I've always been jealous of him. He's always been a fantastic martial artist across the board, because I first met him, I mean, he's only a couple years younger, but his knowledge of martial arts is just vast, even at that time, because he was just a teenager when I met him. And I was like, dude, I'm pretty much dedicating my life to training with you. And even my dad, who is my instructor, eighth degree black belt, would bring Derek into our taekwondo class that does nothing to do with the ground. He's like, teach us about the ground. Yeah. So here he is, you know, my dad at the time was in his late 40s, early 50s at the time, and brought this teenager in to say, basically, 8th degree black belt, you know, about 10 years older than I am now, talking to a teenager saying, come in and teach this to our group because we know nothing about it. And that was one of the cool things about my dad. He was very open-minded. But when it comes to Derek, he's a sponge. He picks things up. So what he sees in his people is once again, it's subjective. You know, what he saw in me, where I'm getting older, I'm not able to, you know, I've got bad back, bad neck, and, you know, half my joints are about shot after doing taekwondo since I was 4 on hardwood floors my entire life. He probably took pity on me. No, no, I mean, just after all the years of training we've done, you know, and my ability to adapt techniques and put it into jiu-jitsu, I would say is fairly unique. I'm not saying I'm, you know, a unique person, but or whatever, but it's one of those things where I take all these different arts, you know, and I'm like, hey, this would go here. This would go here, like Japanese jiu-jitsu, wrist locks, and bring those in all the time. And basically, I'll wrist lock your ankle, I'll wrist lock your knee, whatever. I'm just wanting to wrist lock things. So it's taking that and bringing it in. I would say, you know, other than the time spent, the years I've been doing it, I would say it's my ability to teach the knowledge I have. And I mean, it's not like I'm no slouch on the mats, but I mean, I'm also not a competitive person either. So
Still with my butt.
if I can keep you off my feet, yeah, I have my moments.
Yeah, I'd say 8 to 9 times out of 10 still with my butt.
Well, it goes back to the whole distancing thing. If I can keep you away from me.
Long ass limbs. Okay. Yeah, I totally see that too. It was you know, you teaching wrist locks and me, again, on a language thing, like, oh, you have to break multiple planes. For me, I was just like, I'll just cut the middle. That was my language for it originally. And then you started talking about breaking multiple planes on a wrist lock. And then toe hold's the same thing.
100%.
Right? Just taking those kind of little fundamental ideas and pieces and applying them everywhere else. Or like the way you would manipulate joints, we talked about like pulling the slack out of things. Like, oh, okay, then somebody's either going to move or break. I see what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Why do you like wrist locks so much? That shit's like, there's
because they're easy?
Like, online meta where like people are like, wrist lockers are the devil.
Yeah.
Like that.
Which is funny because I mean, basically your ankle is the same type of, you know, joint, and everybody's like, oh yeah, I'll take your ankle, but wrist lockers, fuck those guys. No, I've always liked it because you have access to them. And it's one of those things where I really got into it because I was doing it in taekwondo. And then I learned the Japanese jiu-jitsu way. And I was like, oh man, this is so much better. And now I can get it almost anywhere. But nobody in jiu-jitsu really does it either. So it's one of those things where I remember when I got my blue belt and we could start doing wrist locks. You know, asking my coach at the time, like, hey, you know, when can we start learning wrist locks? He's like, set up a private. I was like, well, all right, well, fuck that. I was already halfway decent at, you know, wrist locks anyways and applying them from different places. But I was like, okay, you know, so I started doing them on my own anyway. And I like it because it's fun. It's sneaky. You know, it's like people tend to forget about things. Just like, you know, for the longest time, people forgot about their legs. And now everybody's hop on legs and everybody's like, no, you're not getting my legs. And then they forget about the wrists. So the wrists are usually there and I can usually, you know, catch people off guard. I never expect to get the wrist lock. I expect to get the wrist lock to open things. So it's like, all right, outside wrist lock and puts them off balance and then I can trip, or, you know, outside wrist lock, you know, the other hand comes to rescue and I do an arm drag. So I use wrist locks 9 times out of 10 to set up everything else. That 10th time is I want to break their wrist. So I'm like, no, this is mine. I'm keeping it.
So you're only doing it because it's funny.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious. People get pissed off at like, you know.
It's fucked up, Gary.
It's, you can break about every other bone in their body and they're like okay with it, you know, because they consider that a part of jiu-jitsu. All of a sudden the wrist is off limits. I'm like, nah.
I get that way with CSW stuff. I'm like, I'm safe here, and then Jason will just get me with something. I'm not safe anymore.
Yeah.
I got tap.
Yeah, those combat wrestling guys. Nah, screw them.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about Midwest camp?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about the camp.
I'm super excited about that.
I've heard good things. Midwest training camp's been going on for years, and between pretty much myself, Jeremy Horton out of Kansas City, and Derek Stewart out of Omaha, we've constantly bounced it around quite a bit, and so this will be the 6th year that we're doing it, and this will be the first time it's not held at one of our schools. So, all right, thanks. That's good to know. So it's one of the things that I'm excited to do something different, and it's also nerve-wracking as all get out, and especially pretty much the last 2 weeks of anything, the last 2 weeks of the seminar, last 2 weeks of the camp, I start stressing out because I'm like, all right, is everything ready? Is everything, organized and everything else? So the last week I've been super distracted because, I finally got, everything I need to start finalizing things. So what makes this camp unique to you all out there, because he knows, is the fact that it's going to be on a campus, more of a campus style. So we'll be staying. Oddly enough, it's a military style campus, so it's barracks. But we've, your place to stay is covered. Food, we're utilizing their cafeteria, so food is accessible. We're utilizing their Olympic-sized swimming pool that's heated. Yes. And then we're utilizing their wrestling mats. So everything's there that we need. And then it's one of those things that you charge a little bit extra, and you can get access to all this stuff, and it's super awesome. So I'm excited about it. It's just nerve-wracking because it's also about 2 hours from here. So I don't have any control over it. It's one of those things where it's nowhere near anything or anybody presently. We all have to travel to the same place, but it's nice and centrally located for all of the Midwest schools. So the history of the Midwest training camps has always been about, it's all the Midwest instructors, maybe, a guest instructor comes out here and there. So, but it's all about all of us getting together, making sure we all get together annually to promote 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, promote the same camaraderie, in the environment that we all cultivate. And then getting to learn from all the other Midwest instructors at the same time as maybe a guest instructor or two here and there. And so we've got... I'm not teaching this year because I'm running something that I have no clue, I want to make sure everything runs smooth. If it was here, I'd be like, yeah, I'd teach or whatever. But I'm also super, back on like, why do people want to learn from me kind of a thing. So usually I won't teach. But we've got Adelaide Cleveland coming out from Michigan, who's a good friend of ours. He comes out all the time, does seminars. Fantastic jiu-jitsu person. And then we've got Josh Piscini out of Chicago coming out. I tried to get Omar too, but Omar's busy. He's running some kind of a tournament. Derek gave up his spot to John Botello. John Botello is an awesome dude. We've had him out here before. OG, 10th Planet black belt. Very first 10th Planet affiliate of Eddie's. Wow. So that's amazing. He's coming in from Phoenix. We've got Sean Applegate, fantastic coach you guys in the PGF last season. We've had him out here before, and then we've only really got like one person that hasn't been out here before. But Sean's cool because Sean during the camp is doing something special. So the way I have the camp set up is everybody's doing like a 2-hour stint. And then I have Sean coming in and doing a 1.5 hour for the whole campers, and then all the advanced students he's doing an extra 1.5 hours to deep dive into whatever really he wants to do, whether it's legs or how to coach or teaching or whatever. But just to give, I want to start doing that anytime I host a camp, is have something that's dedicated to just the seniors. Have one instructor, because if all instructors did it, camp would be ridiculously long. But just pick one instructor, and one that we don't get to see that often, to come in and, all right, this is just for the upper belts. What do you want to dedicate to us? We already know all the basics. Deep dive into more complexities of the whatever you want to do.
And that helps a lot too, because I went to a seminar once, and it was supposed to be like a leg lock seminar. And Colton and I went, and there was a lot of new people.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's always new
we
people.
ended up having to we were going to be partners, and we ended up having to split off and help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the amount that we were able to progress and learn kind of slowed down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I would say is pretty unique. I've not heard of or seen of that kind of a thing happening before, and I know I'm already excited for that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's going to be good, you know, because we've all been to seminars where it's like, okay, I got this, and maybe there's one or two things that you're like, oh, okay, cool. And typically it's not a new technique, it's a detail.
Yes.
So I'm looking, and that's you know, as we get higher up in rank, there's rarely ever anything new. It's the details that we get all giddy about. You know, lower level folks get excited about new techniques that they can learn and practice. We get excited about details that make things better, and that, you know, and knowing, you know, me, it's like, how do we make things worse?
Yeah.
How can we make things more painful?
I never want to be a uki for that position again.
Oh,
I was like weird north-south head scissor thing. I don't even know what you would call that. It was awful. Every time I went to choke, people thought like, oh yeah, you're selling that. No, I wasn't selling it. I was miserable.
that was the last camp, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that was awful.
Thanks, Jeremy, for throwing me under the bus on that one. That was a last minute seminar I had to put together.
And then me under the wheels of the bus.
Ah, yes. Somebody has to be there. I'm glad it was you, though.
So the Midwest camp is currently closed, and it is finished. The roster is done.
Yep.
All that stuff.
Room assignments done as of this morning. I forgot the other instructors. We got Scott Elliott coming out of Kentucky. I met him a while back, and when Adelaide brought me up to Michigan, he's like, who else would you like to see? I'm like, Scott. You know, I really enjoy Scott because he's got a very similar background to what Derek had brought me up in. You know, the Kali, JKD, and stuff like that. So our mind, I've noticed, and same with Adelaide, our minds all kind of revolve the same. You know, we've got a lot of likenesses in that regard, which brings us up to one of the other instructors coming out, which is the only non-10th planet person, but he's family. I've known him since I've known Derek. Derek has known him since Derek was like Kiahi's height.
Wow.
Since he was like 6 or 8 years old. But Derek's tall, so I'll give it to
Derek's huge. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where Hanalfa Gonzalez, out of he's a Kayotera black belt, and out of the Denver, Colorado area, I think more specifically Aurora. But he's essentially family. He's a family friend. He's been out here before, and he same thing, brings that whole flavor, you know. And I've learned a lot from him. I respect him not only as a martial artist but as a business person too. So if I have business questions, I typically will ping him.
Man, that's a pretty serious deal to be a black belt under Kayotera.
I was about to ask you. You said Kayotera black belt.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's one of the people that I looked up to the most coming up in jiu-jitsu, being one of the smallest people, and then watching him and Bruno Malfacine fight at the top of Worlds, where Bruno was like just way more athletic than Kaio. But Kaio is like, you know, keeping up and beating him sometimes and whatnot, because he's that much more technical. So I know he's got a high standard for technical.
Very high. Gonzo and I have talked about it before, and it's he demands perfection, you know, from his guys. So if you get a black belt from him, you really have, you know, ironed out exactly what Kaio looks for out of his black belts. Not just, okay, you're really good, you know, here's a black belt, you know. It's like he demands it, you know, and if you don't display it, you won't get promoted. So yeah, 100% getting one from him is it's pretty spectacular.
You're kind of like that too.
I demand a lot.
Not demand. You don't demand, but like we can tell, and I'm not just like shitting on other schools or anything, but like we can tell whenever like people have been given belts because they've just been doing it forever or whatever. And obviously there's a difference between competitor and like competitive
The
people
hobbyists.
and then the hobbyists, but like you don't just willy-nilly easily give out blue belts. You don't willy-nilly easily give out purple belts or brown belts. And whoever becomes, well, Rick is your first black belt.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And and in my eyes, you know, as soon as I worked hard to make sure him and Kai, my other first brown belt, you know, got promoted to their brown belts while I was still a brown belt. I was like, it's, you know, essentially they were peers with me, and if it was up to me, Rick, you know, could have been promoted to black when I got my black. Yeah. He's just been Rick's been such an influence on me, you know, helping me get better. I mean, when, a lot of us. Yeah, well, I mean, look how fast people come in. When you first, you know, came to me, even when Rick first came to me, it was like, okay, I was obviously a teacher and everything else, but as you guys progress, you guys are picking up your own thing. Rick brought leg locks, you know, really to the school. I mean, we've had Sean out, we've had a bunch of leg lockers out, and we had been doing leg locks for a while, but Rick brought the details in to make us all much better to the level we are all at now. I mean, both you and I got probably 80% of our leg locks from Rick. Yeah. So it was one of those things where, and then I would say another heavy influence would be Adelaide. Adelaide came in and, you know, had several leg lock seminars to really give us the foundation, you know, and then same with Sean. Sean's only been out once, but he, you know, really started, you know, the foundation of everything. And then Rick brought in all the detail to help, you know, us grow from there.
Yeah, Sean's another person with a really high standard for his black belts. I remember.
Yeah, we've talked about
having a conversation with him. I don't know if he wants that to be shared, but I'll make it as simple and not detailed as possible. But basically, he challenges his brown belts to like it's not really a test. It's more like a critical thinking exercise, and finding out if they're ready on that perspective.
Yeah, it's like a comprehension exam, you know, essentially. Yeah, we talked about that, and that's another thing, you know, going back to, you know, what we consider is, you know, if you do that kind of a test, it's very individualized where, you know, okay, but it is only Sean. Whereas when we promote people, going back full circle to promotions, we have a board, you know, it's not just me. I mean, yes, I make final decisions, but I mean, it's one of those things where we're all fairly in concert with each other anyways. But it's all the instructors get together and we assess our students. So it's like, okay, where are these folks at? Because, you know, I don't see everybody, because we're both teaching, you know, Mondays and Wednesdays during the class where Colton's teaching, you know, fundamentals class. So, but if people only come in on those days, we don't get to see them. Only Colton gets to see them. We may see them sporadically here and there, but if they only come those 2 days a week, you know, we need that assessment. So we have a board that does it, which is, I don't know if that's common. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's one of the things I really appreciate about Colton is he doesn't have an overly high standard, but he has a high standard. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, this person's probably ready. He's like, nah, I let them wait. Nah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the one in charge of it, but you know, or that's what he'll kind of like allude to.
Yeah.
But he's like, now they can wait.
Yeah. And there's times where you promote people to encourage them, and there's times where you hold back on people to push them. So it's jiu-jitsu super subjective. Jiu-jitsu sucks. I don't know why people do it. I don't know why people stay with it.
Doing hard things is important.
Yeah.
So
Let's
real
quick. Let's
which
talk
part do you
about
want to jump to?
Okay.
The buggy choke.
That's what I thought you were going to talk about.
So like the buggy
ridiculous.
choke has absolutely stormed in the last.
It's popular. Right?
Yeah, it's popular.
So
it's ridiculous though.
Back in
the whole thing's dumb.
Me being a white belt and a blue belt, baseball bat chokes were super new. I literally won my way through, like, I got second place in Pan Am's as a white belt, and I won Worlds as a white belt. But like, I mean, a lot of it was threatening and doing baseball bat chokes. I put a guy out with a baseball bat choke from the bottom. It was new. People didn't know what the heck was going on. And then buggy chokes, like, you're in side control. That shouldn't happen. It's not a triangle. No. It's not any kind of like regular triangle. Excuse me. It's basically a triangle.
It's a weird head-arm choke.
Yeah. Yeah. Really strange. How did you come into learning the buggy choke?
I first came across, I don't know if I saw it somewhere scrolling through social media or whatever, but I first came across it watching a video of a guy catching Marcelo with it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, that's,
That's wild.
yeah, I know. Marcel is just a god. But I mean, it's one of those things where we all roll with people, and we're not ever rolling seriously half the time. I mean, Marcelo will kill anybody on the street. So it's probably one of those things. He was just going, and I've done this a lot, where people do something different, and you kind of hang out to figure out what they're doing. And I'm very sure that's what happened here. And then Marcelo tapped, and then I'm pretty sure he went on to destroy the guy. But I was like, weird, what is that? And then I started playing with it more. And once again, going back to I'm 6'2", I've got long limbs. So for me, it's fairly easy to get into things. And, I'm already flexible from my taekwondo days, which is what I fell in love with 10th Planet for. It was like, rubber guard. Oh, man, this is meant for me. I was like, this is easy. I don't know why everybody's not doing this, and I just fell in love with it. And but the buggy choke, I was like, all right, how does this work exactly? And you essentially put yourself in kind of a bad spot because you do it from the bottom. You do it from a position where it can be taken advantage of, and you get put in a head and arm.
Yeah, we've seen it been
So
flipped.
yeah, so it's one of those things you have to be aware of the position. You have to be aware of what your partner is doing, which is why I think the big commentary behind it is, if you're a beginner, you're new, you shouldn't be doing this kind of a thing because okay, it's flashy. You may catch somebody that's not aware, but at the same time, you're also, essentially putting yourself in a head and arm if you're not careful and have the awareness of what your opponent's doing.
And conceptually, learning one of those kinds of moves first, something that's kind of like has a big risk factor. That's your go-to move when you're new. You don't have a lot going on. It's not really something that's gonna keep you wanting to do jiu-jitsu when you're getting smashed because people are figuring it out.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've started doing it for a while and was catching people, but I never really taught it because it was one of those things where I felt it was only for long limb people, or it was specific to you have to be the same size as your partner kind of a thing, or bigger than your partner. A smaller person's not going to be able to do it to a bigger person. But you've attempted it on me a couple times. And I was like, okay, yeah, screw this, and you just cross-face, everybody and you get out of it. But also, I'm highly aware of it. So as soon as people start doing it, it's like, oh, okay. You do things so often, you're like, no, I know what this is.
Yeah, between that and the fly trap, I'm very...
I suck at the fly trap.
Side control...
I wish I was Jeremiah Vance.
Yeah. But like,
dude, he's so good.
side control's not safe. And I mean, it's thanks to you and having a, on bottom side control game that nobody keeps me in side control anymore.
No, yeah. I mean, I would say that's probably one of the unique things about our school is we train to be offensive from the bottom side. I use offense to set up defense. I use defense to set up offense. And that all spurred from just me being broken.
Yeah.
I have a horrible lower back, and I had a bunch of back injections, and I couldn't do jiu-jitsu for a while. And then when I could finally get on the mats, it was hard for me to do much. So I would just do everything from bottom. I'm like, okay, I can't pressure pass because it hurts my lower back. So guard, pulls everything in. So I was like, all right, screw it. Bottom side control is amazing because I can just lay here comfortably for a while and just kind of play. So I was like, what can I do from here? I started looking at what my legs alone can do to arms, what my legs can do to triangles. So it became very offensive from the bottom side. And then when I saw Buggy choke, I was like, all right, dope. I love bottom side.
Yeah.
What else can I do from here? And it just worked really well to be able to, and then start breaking it down. How can I make it work? How is this actually applied? But it takes a lot of strength. It does. It's an
awkward strength.
It's a side crunching, weird squeeze, lat flexing, thing where, you start getting inside of here, and you got to really squeeze and do a side crunch, and then you can cross your legs and get those involved and everything else. But it's one of those things where I never really taught it for a while because I thought it was very specific to just certain sizes. And then I was like, okay, I'll show a little bit. It's still not in our curriculum. it's still not taught the fundamentals or anybody really. We'll teach it sporadically. We'll teach a one-off kind of thing.
Normally people are asking about it, and that's when they get taught.
Yeah.
I remember asking you about it because I spoke to Brandon briefly, and I was like, I asked him something about like something about chokes, or I asked him some question, and he brought up the buggy choke, and he brought up the fact that like you've tapped him with this thing. At the time, I had no idea what it was. He's like, yeah, Gary's tapped me before with this thing, buggy choke, and I was like, I'm gonna go ask Gary. And I asked you, and you were like, looking up and down. I was like, no.
It's not for you.
But I had also only been here for like 8 or 9 months, so.
You're barely a person if you're not here for a year.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
we don't remember your names. We remember your names. I remember everyone. Not everyone, but.
That's probably not true.
It's always a running joke.
Man, I met somebody the other day, yesterday, at Ace Hardware. I was like, they got
Buggy choke somebody in Ace Hardware?
Damn.
No, that'd be interesting.
You didn't tell me that when you came back to the car.
No, but his face looked familiar. I had to look at his name tag. I was like, oh, okay. I still don't remember how much or how long you're in, but he's like, he gave me the, hey, how's 10th Planet doing? I'm like, good?
Yeah.
Do I know?
Still there and popping.
But no.
I've been hit up by, the wildest thing for me is I'm horrible with faces, period. But adults typically don't change. But kids, they grow up, they grow tall. I remember I was out with my family, and I'm going to call him a kid because if you're still in your 20s, you're still a kid. But he's like, oh, I used to train with you when I was a kid. I'm like, when you were a kid, dude's like my height now. Doesn't look anything like you did when he was a kid. I'm like, oh, cool. I felt really bad because, I feel bad I don't recognize people. But at the same time, it's like, man, you've changed so much.
I think it was like Ian Freeman. If he wasn't redheaded, because like those are distinctive people.
Yeah.
He looks so different now.
Yeah.
He's jacked now.
Yeah.
He's jacked and
huge.
his hair's longer and stuff.
Yeah. He has
Wears
a
pit
mullet.
vipers.
I don't get the whole mullet thing. That's when I figured out I'm old because I'm not on the hip. What's going on nowadays? Everybody's got mullets. I'm like, I don't know why. I had a mullet, but that was the 80s. Everybody had a mullet back then.
80s came back hard though.
Yeah, it did.
That's the thing.
It did. Well, I think it's the whole Stranger Things kickback. All right, it's the 80s.
Which is
I
funny.
haven't watched all that.
No.
Here's a video real quick. I don't know if you guys watched all of West Coast Trials, but I believe
Is that
it's
Rotolo on
Macy
top?
Gomez.
Oh,
No.
okay.
And
Oh man, he didn't even cut the angle on it.
No.
That's
I don't know if you guys
now
saw
he's
this at
gonna.
West Coast Trials.
Sometimes people will just they just be shooting in and they'll make it tighter.
Bam!
Ooh.
And I'm out. And I'm
Slams
out.
are illegal.
In ADCC, they are illegal.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you bring that up because one of the first comments is somebody bitching about slamming in ADCC.
No, you have to
And
be aware of
everybody's
that.
just like, you
Dude.
you came to the rules, meaning you signed the waiver, you know what you're in for.
Yeah.
Because if we don't allow slams in ADCC, when do we?
The next day.
Like I get
So-
that, but
And I remember that coming up. It's like, all right, slams aren't going to be, that's the end all be all of the buggy choke. That's going to stop the buggy. You see how he's got
he's
his leg
using that
right?
bottom
That's
leg
kinda cool.
Yeah.
to help
So he
keep him
didn't-
closer to the
so-
ground.
That's wild.
I saw J-Rod interview, and he said that it wasn't the buggy choke
It was
finish
this.
that finished him. It
He
was,
got that panther punch
he
on his
put that
neck.
Panther punch, and he just punched in. So technically, it was a punch choke that finished him.
Yeah. Buggy punch. Choke.
Yeah. But I remember people were talking about, all right, that's the end of the buggy choke. You get slammed and it's nothing anymore. And it's like, well, you can also let go. I mean,
Yeah. So that's the first thing I teach when I teach buggy choke. Is like, here's how you finish. Now immediately understand when it's gone, and recover guard because they're gonna open.
That's every single
if
thing,
they
though.
if they come up, they're giving you your guard back.
yeah, that's everything though. You got to recognize when it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the
Point
one
of
thing.
return.
Yeah. I mean, even rubber guard. It's like, all right, they pass the leg, they pass the both leg, and if I haven't crossed over to chill dog or at least have meat hook or something,
Yeah.
this is gonna break.
Yeah.
you
You're,
know?
you're asking for trouble at that point.
Yeah. So, and that's the funny thing everybody makes fun of. It's like, oh, it's not the end all. Yeah, there's nothing that's the end all be all, or else it would be all jujitsu. But lockdown. Oh, lockdown doesn't work. Well, I mean, if you just sit there with lockdown and don't do a thing, it's not doing anything. It's literally just stalling. Waiting for the other person to do something. But if you're active with it, then you can start manipulating. So it's one of those things that people just hold on to things because they still have it. And it's like, nah, yeah, it's gone now. You gotta let go.
Yeah.
And being, you know, a few feet off the ground, that's a good time to let go.
Yeah. It's like triangles. Same
Triangles.
thing with
I do the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing.
like, oh, I just pick him up and slam him.
If
Probably-
somebody's strong enough and I don't have that leg underhooked, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna let go. I'm gonna try and sweep you at that point.
Yeah, I remember you always telling me, like, no, dog, I respect the slam. Trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alright, so we talked about this briefly earlier. This is what I was talking about, Gary. So, if everyone on the planet today were to fight in tournaments until we had a winner, how many fights would the winner have to win, become the champion? Pretty much. So, you take all 8.8 billion or 7.7 billion people on the planet, and you make them
That's
fight.
a massive difference, by the way. It's a whole billion off.
Right. But if you make them fight, because down here, the answer for this, it says 8.8. But the other day I saw it said 7.7 billion people.
Yeah,
So
I don't think we're at 8 yet.
yeah. I don't know if these numbers are 100% correct, but these people are on Reddit, so they did the math.
Okay, yeah.
Somebody
So
did
obviously they're smart.
So this is what you get. About 33 matches. Now the question is...
Unless you get a bye.
imagine
I want that bye.
Imagine this
Right?
is the thing, and you get that buy, dude. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that would be something that...
That's the saver right there.
Yeah, that would put somebody,
Yeah.
like... Because after your first match, then you're, like... We talked about this briefly yesterday, Mario, me, Adam, Jeff, and Steve.
Yep.
You... Once you get through, like, your first 10 people,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, you're starting to fight bad motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
the Muay Thai guys from Thailand.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. But my thing is how high do you think that Gordon Ryan gets into, like, semifinal
Well,
brackets?
before we can like declare that, we have to understand rule set.
Yeah, what are the
and
rules?
The
environment.
rule set, so it's
Is it jiu-jitsu?
no, it's a street fight,
Ah.
but in a void.
Gotcha.
So it's a
In a void.
It's a 12 foot by 12 foot void. So there's just 12 feet all around in a big square,
Okay. And you've got that one person.
and it's just you and another person.
One-on-one.
Absolute? No weight?
Yeah, no weights.
It's everybody versus everybody.
It's everybody in the world versus everybody in the world.
Hold on. There are babies.
Yeah, man.
Wait a second.
If you get a baby,
Dude, I'm gonna fuck up a baby.
gonna fuck a
just
baby up,
just
dude.
destroy.
Unless I take the baby's arm, but
Yeah.
tap on me.
yeah,
Get
just
here.
They just don't understand.
so that's a buy. I mean, technically, you know,
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
a buy there.
Who decides to buy?
You
know,
have to have
so-
somebody running it.
Computer randomizes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then everything is randomized.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, oh, well, these guys are trained professionals.
Yeah.
But like,
So
you
is
know,
at the I mean we're at 33 and that's like the pinnacle.
Yeah.
That last match is like the
baddest
winners of
motherfuckers
every.
on the
Oh,
planet,
okay.
yeah.
How far would Gordon get?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really big dudes that are really good
Yeah.
that train. You know?
Adam put that point across. He was like, do you think Gordon Ryan would, in a street fight, would beat up Francis Ngannou?
Yeah.
No, I
I was
don't.
gonna say.
But if Gordon Ryan gets to, like, fight 30,
Mm-hmm.
One, two. 1, 2, 3.
That wasn't good.
1, 2, 3. That was better. Yeah.
影分身の術
That was better. No, we're not brothers. Again, also, I just want to do a quick shout out once again to my man AG over at Toehold. Thank you so much for the slippers. Like, these are incredible. They really are. Mario's are sick. These are sick. Anybody that is interested in buying a pair, shoptoehold.com. AG has the best leather, the most ethically sourced. Recently, me and him talked briefly about it, and I can't wait to go see him out in Vegas. But we talked briefly about it, and he gets his leather from a company that's like 135 years old. It's a tannery or leathery or whatever. I don't know how you say that, call that. But hands down, I've had these for a couple of days, and these are the best slippers I've ever owned in my life. So get you a pair at shoptoehold.com.
The old school guys like Couture and Iceman and Matt Hughes, which were there forever. You know, people are much better at fighting now, much better, well-rounded. You'll see a lot more, you know, give and takes.
Yeah.
So the most well-rounded one is my answer. That's my cheat answer. I'm out. You know, it's that well-rounded person. You style versus style, I'd have to think a lot more. But if you're talking about that 33-person tournament, the person that knows a little bit of everything is gonna make it to the top.
I bet Jocko Willink could
And
be
has
there.
size on their side.
I think he'd get fucked up.
I think he's probably like a
He's
really,
old and broken now.
His hair.
Oh, I don't know about
Very
broken,
fair.
but he's older.
He's older.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's not in fantastic shape. Dude still gets up early ass in the morning and works out.
And like Joe Rogan, I think they could make it pretty far.
Joe might make it pretty far. I think Joe might make it a little further. I don't know if Jocko's on
Because
steroids.
if we're talking
like Joe
about
is.
well-rounded, right? And the reason I'm saying that is because like Jocko's a trained Navy SEAL, and he's good jiu-jitsu, good enough to be a black belt, right? And that same thing with Joe, he's fairly well-rounded.
Yeah, but we're taking weapons out of the equation. So
This is
being
fair.
a good trained Navy SEAL,
It's just
you've
straight
got strategy on your side,
yeah.
but you also work on a team. You're not one person. So
That's a good point.
take away all their tools and all their weapons, and you've got a really fit person that knows, you know, some combatives.
At his point, some combatives and jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
Oh shit! I didn't know that Jocko was a Dean Lister black belt.
yeah,
I did not know that.
which is another person to maybe consider. Although he's getting kind of old.
Yeah, but like those, I think
Boogeyman.
like Dean Lister, Yoel Romero, those types of guys.
That'd be fun to watch.
Dean Lister versus Yoel Romero in a
and-
grappling match.
Yeah,
That would be insane.
that would be crazy.
Like fully juiced out Dean.
As long as
fully
you all
juiced
learn
out
some basic leg
Yoel.
stuff, it could be very interesting.
That would be a really fun match. I think like Yoel and Paul Harris would be a really good match. Dude.
Yeah, too
That
bad.
would be a fun match. To
Really, I was gonna say too bad he got banned from UFC, but it's not. It's not. It's really for everyone's safety.
watch. Yeah, that guy didn't give a shit. He was
No.
just hanging on the heel hooks.
Blackout.
I mean, but that's
So,
smart, though.
but you look at that, and you look at the people now that are in tournaments, you know, and just ripping heel hooks.
Gianni Grippo, we're talking about.
Yeah,
No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, and then just getting up and walking away. Is there a difference of holding on to something until, you know, while somebody's tapping and not letting go, versus blatantly ripping it away and tearing it off so much where you're so confident you destroyed that person's leg that you got up and walked away?
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying about him, is that he, like, if he was doing that and he was just holding on, well, if he ripped in the because he would rip, but like he rip in the beginning and then just hang on to it,
Yeah.
just to make sure he tore up.
Just let
everything
you
else
know
in there.
that he's, you know, gonna.
But
It's
then-
his. He's
but
taking
then,
it home
like,
with him.
on his way, like up the ladder before he got banned for doing that shit. He was probably, and this is just my opinion, what I would think. Well, I don't have to worry about this guy ever coming back, and I don't have to fight him anymore because I just destroyed his life.
That's awful.
And that's an awful way to think, but like when you're hanging on to people's knees like that, I feel like that's a possibility that you probably have that mindset. Like, I don't really care about other people's safety and shit like that.
Oh, for sure.
And we've also seen all the matches where there's that fake tap, the Brazilian tap, where or they'll make a noise and stop is like, no, I was just trying to get out, you know.
Oh yeah.
So you hold on to things for a little while.
Playing possum. As some people have called it. I've heard some people call it before.
Yeah, but there's there's rules for that. There's a reason that there are rules for that. And they probably should be discussed during tournament. Like, if you look like you're asleep and we check and you still look like you're asleep, you don't give me a thumbs up or nothing. Like, we're gonna call it. It's like kids, your arm's straight. We're calling it. We're not letting
100%.
you break your arm.
Yeah.
Safety issue.
Yeah.
Kids freak me out with their flexibility. The kids that like their elbow bends in the opposite direction like that much more, and you're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm done.
That's why at our in-house tournaments,
You
when
can't
like,
always
hey,
trust a ref.
Like, watch the kids. I'm like, I don't want to, because I feel bad for the other kid that the other kid's like, no, it was fine. I'm like, nah, bro, like your arm was gonna.
Especially
break.
shoulder locks. You know, I'm much more aware of those now because I had flexible
Yeah.
shoulders for the longest time.
Yeah.
You're like,
And
"Oh,
then
my
both
shoulder
the
just keeps
rotator
moving."
cuffs have tears in them. I'm like, all right, now there's zero flexibility.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, all right, even though you're flexible, let's not push it because you're going to be like me. And you're going to be doing that all the time. And people are going to, okay, keep going. Not like it tore in a match, but it just tore over time.
it's one of those things that I kind of want to be like, yeah, you should develop some more muscle in that area so that you have better skill and not be in that space to begin with.
So you're saying
Not you,
we
but
all have to like
kids.
get super jacked?
Maybe not super jacked,
Size matters.
but just enough.
Size matters.
Size matters.
Yeah, it
Size
does.
matters.
Yeah.
I don't care what they say.
Unfortunately, it does. As much as in my early jiu-jitsu, it was like, oh, technique always beats strength and size. You have to be way better than the other person.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have to be better.
Way better at at black belt level. Like you just have to be way better.
So
Then
it's safe to say Marcelo
cardio
is way
can-
better than everybody.
cardio can also beat strength and size,
Yeah.
It's true.
as long as they don't know the technique.
If you're in that void and you get somebody who can just run away until the other person is tired and punch them in the throat.
It's 12 feet. It's not that
Big
much
people
dog.
have a lot of weight to carry around. If they don't have the cardio to carry around that long,
Imagine
they're
like,
gonna go out
Big
soon.
Mike and Lex just outruns him and then puts him in a rear naked choke.
Yeah, but imagine Lex keeps running. Big Mike's like, all right,
I'm just gonna stand here and wait till you come
Yeah.
over
I'm
here.
just gonna sit.
He
Yeah.
pulls like
So
a,
that's what I was telling him. I was like, oh yeah, well, what if the runner ends up fighting a guard puller?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody just sits guard, they're like,
that becomes a problem.
we're
Yeah.
here forever because this is no time limit.
Yeah.
Then it comes down to who's gonna survive without food
Mm-hmm.
because that becomes a thing because you're not eating during these matches.
Man.
Big Mike will survive longer than Lex will because Lex's body will start once your body starts feeding off of itself. Big Mike's got way more to feed off of.
Yeah.
I watched
but-
this show all
but-
that goes like that, where like these guys were like at the top of martial arts, and they were fighting on like some island. They had to like find food to eat real quick and keep fighting. It's crazy.
But you also come across the fact that the people who are going to make it up to the top are the people that train and have that understanding of I'm going to be able to execute this for this extended period of time. They really know their bodies and everything
Yeah.
else.
That's a big deal.
They won't get hangry.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. What time is it? You got time?
The time was on there.
Yeah, it was on there.
I
Now
want
it's
to say
gone.
it's
Yeah, I
like
had to- I
it's
just
about
closed
it's
the
about
thing.
10:50, 10:52.
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, Gary, thank you so much, man, for being a part of the show.
Thank you,
I'm gonna
guys. This
close
was fun.
out 'cause,
Oh, yeah.
This is essentially just a recording of our normal conversations anyway, so
Yeah.
I like it.
it's time to go train
Yeah.
for you, maybe
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, man, I got
Yeah.
pee real bad.
I'm going to train. It just takes me a while
Dude,
to
if
warm
you
up
ever
anymore.
Have to take a piss, just be like, I'm gonna go take a pee. I'll be right back. Turn your mic off. Walk in there, take a piss.
Oh, I should leave it
That's
on.
so amazing.
Gary's like, I'm gonna go take a shit, and I'm gonna leave my mic on.
I'm going to move the mic.
At least you just don't take the camera with you because this is an entire mobile setup. I like that about this. But yeah, man.
No, thanks, guys. This was fun.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
thank you
Thanks
for
for
coming
coming.
on. And
If we got more topics to talk
I
about,
plan to have you
let's
on
do it again.
Yeah.
much more in these next couple of months. So.
Sounds good.
Just as a heads up, this is 10th Planet of Fallon. It's Gary's school. He owns it, and he lets us do all this cool stuff here. So, thank you.
For sure.
Yeah, thank
Rent
you
free.
so much. Yes, it's rent free for us. But fuck yeah, it's rent free. I was gonna come up with something and be like, yeah, but we get back to it's fucking rent free. Thank you so much. We love you, Gary Meek, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.